Good evening and welcome to the May 1st, 2023 meeting of the Arlington County Planning Commission. I'm Commissioner Steinberger, Vice Chair, filling in for our chair who had a conflict tonight. Tonight, the commission will consider the following agenda items. Item 1, ZOA 2023-05, an ordinance to amend, reenact, and recodify Articles 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 12, 13, 15, 16, and 18 of the Arlington County zoning ordinance to correct technical errors and to update regulatory inconsistencies. Item 2, ZOA 2023-06, FBC-30, and NFBC-17, an ordinance to amend, reenact, and recodify Articles 7, 8, 11, 12, and 18, Sections 3 and 4 of Appendix A, Columbia Pike Special Revitalization District Form-Based Code, and Part 9 of Appendix B, Columbia Pike Neighborhood Special Revitalization District Form-Based Code of the Arlington County Zoning Ordinance. ACZO, do I have to read all of the items it's relating to? Do I have to read all the sub-items that it's relating to? Great, and assorted sub-items 1 through 6. Item 3, consideration of the following actions pertaining to 2000 North Glebe Road, Sunrise Senior Living Special General Land Use Plan GLUP study. Acceptance of the 2000 North Glebe Road, Sunrise Senior Living Special General Land Use Plan Study Document, request to advertise future public hearings by the Planning Commission and County Board to consider a GLUP amendment from low residential 1 to 10 units per acre to low medium residential for the area located in the northwestern corner of North Glebe Road and 20th Street North. And then the last item will be PC business, approval of the April 10th, 2023 meeting minutes, staff report on current matters, and I believe we have a few other assorted activities. Great. With that, I'm going to call the first item. That's the ZOA 2023-05, ordinance to amend, recodify, and reenact and recodify a series of articles of the Arlington County zoning ordinance. Is there a staff presentation on this?
Yes, hi, I'm Cliff Hogan. I'm with the zoning division. I can put up my presentation in just a second.
Great. Oh, now there's a face to go with the voice. Great. Thank you.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. I was trying to figure out where to look, but this works.
Okay. Oops. Okay. Is the presentation up? Okay. Yeah, so this is an amendment to the zoning ordinance that is going to be taking quite a few corrections in the zoning ordinance. There are multiple errors that are very technical in nature. Just to give you a background, so over the course of the past several years, and while in administering the zoning ordinance, writing determinations, issuing permits, answering questions to interpret the zoning ordinance, we've in the zoning division, we've discovered quite a few minor errors, inaccuracies, inconsistencies. These are everything from minor grammatical errors to incorrect citations and references. It could be provisions that are not in compliance with the Code of Virginia or other regulations such as the building code or the county code. And in the zoning division, we have maintained a catalog of these, and as of today, there are approximately 60 of these errors. And we've been working with the planning division to come up with a system to take these errors through the legislative process and have them corrected. The issue with these errors is that these are all demonstrably provable. So there's really no study policy or community engagement. These are correcting things that are, just demonstrably provable that they're wrong. You may not be able to see on the slide, but on the right-hand slide, these are some examples of the errors. For instance, Jefferson Davis Highway was renamed Richmond Highway several years back. So there's really not a lot of policy study to correct that. And so we are going to be going through with a series of these amendments to correct these errors in the zoning ordinance. This first batch is primarily line item edits. They're very we basically have in three categories: Scrivener's errors, technical corrections, and clarifications. And again, the Scrivener's errors are incorrect citations. In some cases, there are spelling or grammatical errors, errors on diagrams that are not in line with and comporting with the actual text of the regulations. The technical corrections are, again, more conflicting provisions, regulations that don't comport with the Code of Virginia or the building code and so forth. And then clarifications are more, they're just to make things clearer when we have to interpret the zoning ordinance. And again, this will be the first in a series we're going to do. Future ones will include updating our telecom regulations to be consistent with the Code of Virginia. There are several inconsistencies with particularly Article 3, which pertains to setback placement coverage for by right projects. And yeah, so there'll be more of these coming forward, but this is the very first one of these technical corrections that we're hoping to go through the process. So again, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any, Madam Chair, Secretary, do we have any public speakers on this item? Do we have any not public speakers on this item?
Not on this item, no.
Okay.
Are you surprised?
No speakers, got it. The matter is now with the commission. Do we have anyone who wishes to be recognized on this item?
I'll do a quick report.
ZOCO report. Yes, please.
Yeah, so this came in front of ZOCO on January 17th, I believe, and it's something we've been expecting to be coming up, and it will come up again as the staff presentation mentioned. So, but other than that, it's fairly self-explanatory and straightforward.
Thank you. I appreciate the clear report on that matter. Would anyone on the commission like to be recognized for this item? Questions, comments, concerns? If not, I have a motion. Great. Leo, Commissioner Sarli, are you okay if I make the motion? Or did you?
Please
Okay.
do.
Okay.
Please do.
I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the County Board amend, reenact, and recodify Articles 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 12, 13, 15, 16, and 18 of the Arlington County Zoning Ordinance, as shown in Attachment A of the staff report, to correct technical errors, to update regulatory inconsistencies, to make editorial changes for improved clarity, and for other reasons required by public necessity, convenience, general welfare, and good zoning practice. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Guerin has seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, I will move to vote. Commissioner Begley?
Aye.
Sorry, I'm getting organized. Okay. Sorry, Commissioner Hughes?
Aye.
Commissioner Guerin?
Aye.
Commissioner Ware?
Aye.
Commissioner Lantelmi?
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Sarli?
Aye.
Commissioner Karen, I apologize, I've forgotten your last name.
Guevara. Aye.
Thank you very much. One more time? Last name?
Guevara.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Schroll is here virtually. Commissioner Schroll?
Aye.
And Commissioner Steinberger votes aye. The matter passes unanimously. Thank you. Madam Clerk, can you please call the second item?
Sure. Item number 2 is ZOA-2023-06, FBC-30, and N-FBC-17. We have Mark McCulley to present this item this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're here tonight to address 2 potential or proposed changes to the zoning ordinance use tables that will be heard by the county board later this month. One is the redefinition and addition of audio, video, and broadcasting use as an office use. And the second one is the introduction of a flex R&D use as part of our office use table. So again, my name is Mark McCauley, Arlington Economic Development, but in this context, one of the co-leads of the Commercial Market Resiliency Initiative, the manager's initiative to more nimbly and adeptly change parts of the zoning ordinance in response to economic change. This item was advertised by the county board on March 18th. We went to the ZOCO on March 14th, had a good discussion there. And coming before the board this month is relative to the quick nature of the process of the Commercial Market Resilience Initiative, in particular with these uses, the relatively limited impact that these uses inside of office buildings would have on the general public, identified tenant demand, and the potential positive impact on placemaking goals and office vacancy. So first, audiovisual production and broadcast space. You'll see the definition here. Obviously, somewhat self-explanatory. These are uses that would be producing and broadcasting audio and visual media. We currently have a definition in the zoning ordinance, but this would expand it. And why are we doing this? Well, obviously, media companies have been using have been part of our office inventory for quite some time. But as the economy has changed, we've seen some different trends, things like podcasting, digital broadcasting, co-location of these types of uses within hotels, office buildings, restaurants, multifamily and retail spaces. And the growth of something that I don't know anything about, but other people do, the influencer market. And apparently that's a big thing. So we're really trying to make sure our zoning ordinance is reflective of these opportunities. Again, this would allow for co-location of these types of uses with other spaces and to fill vacant space, provides an attractive amenity, allows for new revenue streams for buildings that are looking to recover from the pandemic, looking to lower the barrier of entry in creating visually interesting streetscapes, and space for creativity and skill building for folks, for uses that bring people together and create a sense of community. The second use, as I mentioned, is what we're calling research and development flex space. This is the introduction of into office spaces of what typically is called R&D space, which is a combination of traditional office uses with things like robotic labs or laboratories or other things, but is not meant to be wholesale manufacturing or production. It's R&D, research, often with technology, very clean type of research, not messy, and therefore have been really are appropriate for office space use, particularly since a lot of these uses are something that our emerging tech companies want to really have as they think about how to use their space post-pandemic. They need places for administrative functions, for office use, but also need places that do these sort of research and development activities. So we see that the rapid expansion of the life science and technology sectors in the DMV area and want to have our zoning ordinance allow us the ability to attract and retain these types of tenants. So again, the idea here being that the way commercial office buildings are being used has changed and is continuing to changing, not just because of the pandemic, but I think certainly as we think about return to office, these are the types of uses that actually bring people back into the office. We all know we can work from home if we have a Zoom or Teams, but in terms of doing these types of activities, you need to be in a space with specialized equipment that can handle the necessary back of house activities that support these. So we really think this is an important part of not only filling vacant office space, but also having uses that bring people back into the office and supporting our local community. So again, a lot of this, as I said, return to office allows our BIG team, which if you're not familiar with the term, it's our business investment group and AED, who go out there and find tenants and retain tenants. This allows them to ramp up efforts across the country to find firms and be able to offer them this type of space. It allows entrepreneurs to locate near universities and industry, which we think is an important synergy. And then obviously one of the outcomes here is that we think that through this we'll have a much more streamlined process. If we do have a tenant that's looking to be creative with their space, we'll have the ability to react quickly and get them into that space and make their decision faster. So one of the things we talked about at ZOCO, and I'm sure Commissioner Sally will mention this as well, we had a good discussion about, is there any danger of these uses from a land use perspective? And we really think these uses, given the technology that they use, they're not dirty industry, they're clean industry. But also that there's a number of other regulations that exist, local, state, and federal, that protect us from any of these uses being a nuisance or noxious, having a nuisance or noxious impact on the broader community. And we are certainly not alone. In fact, I think this is certainly an example of one where we need to work quickly on these sort of amendments to catch up in many ways to our peer cities, like in Boston and Cambridge, out in the West, San Diego, San Francisco, Berkeley. All of these places have parts of their zoning ordinance that allow these uses within office buildings. And even locally, Montgomery County, Prince George's County, Fairfax County have also worked to get these types of uses. So we really think this is important for our competitive positioning in the marketplace. And you'll see that currently how the office table looks, and all this would simply do is add a newly defined use of research and development flex, as well as redefining audio, visual, and broadcast studio as part of our office use. This is important because as we approve site plans and they're approved for office, having them in the office use table is important so that we don't need any major site plan or minor site plan amendments to be able to allow these by right uses. And again, this is I won't read this, but part of this is also reflecting the change of the office definition of office to include these uses. And then the recommendation, I obviously will not read this, but thank you. Any questions? Happy to have a good discussion.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the report. Madam Clerk, do we have any public speakers on this matter?
We do not.
Okay. Do we have a ZOCO report?
Sure. So thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, it did come in front of ZOCO on March 14th, as Mr. McCauley mentioned, and we did have a fairly hearty discussion about unintended consequences and sort of making sure that we can fix any issues as we go along. I think this whole process, as it's been coming in front of the ZOCO and in front of the Planning Commission is sort of an ongoing activity, and we're sort of just making the market more resilient, which of course we've all heard about. So I think this is something that generally the ZOCO committee was happy to support, and we did flag a few issues that I think staff have sort of now put on the radar, and we're ready to move forward.
Excellent. Appreciate that report. The matter is now with the commission. Commissioner Sarli, are there any specific topic areas you'd like to direct our conversation to? Otherwise, I open the floor if there are specific topic areas, or we can have I think it's a concise enough topic, we can have a free-for-all.
I welcome a free-for-all. The only highlight was sort of this notion of controlling any sort of dangerous or perhaps, toxic or chemical or bio sort of uses within these and how we would control it. I think there was a little bit of unclarity as to which code would be in effect. I don't think the building code manages what kind of use goes into a building, but Mr. McCauley can correct me and clarify that issue. And that was a little bit of the sort of thing that really stood out in my mind. But I don't think it's something that we need to be too worried about. But other than that, it's a free-for-all.
Thank you. And I apologize, I failed to do this on this item and the one before. Are there any other commission reports? For this item, the prior item already passed, so you lost your chance. Okay, no other commission reports on this item. Thank you. I appreciate that update, Commissioner Sarli. Would anyone like to be recognized on this item? Yes, Commissioner Peterson, and then Commissioner Lantalmi.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you listing in the staff report all of the different regulations that would be acting to protect the citizens from possible chemical or other hazardous research that might be getting done. I did want to clarify. So we have listed here, research and development laboratory uses are regulated for public life and safety through a variety of local, state, and federal regulations, including but not limited to Arlington County Fire Prevention Code, Virginia Statewide Fire Prevention Code, Virginia Construction Code, International Building Code, National Fire Protection Association, U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Center for Disease Control and National Institute of Health, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, and a variety of other federal regulations. So after listening to me read that list, my concern would be if a citizen was worried about something that was happening in a building that was, or in a unit like below them, if it's ground floor usage, or in a building next to them, are they going to have to search in these 12 different regulatory agencies to make sure that this is kosher? Is there any person, a point of contact that they could reach out to and say, I smell something strange, is this safe? How do we know it's safe? A startup organization that is interested in doing some R&D as a new business. This seems like a lot of organizations that they'd have to get into compliance with, whereas maybe if there was an Arlington policy that kind of brought everything together very easily, it might make it easier for a small business startup to get into this market. So I just wanted to get your feedback on all of that, if this is the easiest way from a communications point of view to handle this.
Yeah, I think the short answer is the easiest first call and really overarching life safety is done through our Inspection Services Division, a building code. And they would capture all that. I think a lot of these other regulations, quite frankly, if you are in the business of doing bioscience laboratory work, you're probably just more familiar with these because that's part of your business. You have to get the right certification, get the right, but yes, from a practical standpoint, if someone said, there's a smell, there's a noise, there's a vibration, the first call would be to the building code official, and they would check it out. And certainly the building code would be a pretty robust tool for addressing any noxious issues that were coming out of the space.
Yes, thank you. I'm very happy with this moving forward. I participated in the ZOCO, and we did have a very robust discussion about all of these topics. So I think we did a pretty good job vetting those, raising the questions I think that needed to be needed to be answered. So that was great. What really helps me here also is that Cambridge, Massachusetts basically has no controls. They rely on others. Cambridge in many ways is our twin. In so many ways, it's our twin. So if they've been having a very good experience with this, and I take it it's more than just a year or so that they have had this paradigm in place, that gives me a lot of confidence that it'll work here too. It's been quite a engine for growth in Cambridge. These type of uses, they just line them up all through Cambridge. They have entire areas of the city that seem to be devoted to this type of work. So it'd be great if we could have that happen here also. That would definitely help with our office vacancy rates. Do we have other types of, getting a little off topic, others coming in the pipeline for looking at regulations that we can be streamlining that would allow us to have more economic activity in our office buildings?
Yeah, we are, and in June, there'll be some items in front of the Planning Commission and the board that will deal with food delivery services and shared commercial kitchens. So we have gone to the ZOCO on that as well, or will be going to the ZOCO, I'm sorry, right? And I think that's the next one that's been advertised. After that, we are definitely looking at, okay, what is next? I can tell you top of list is a process change that's been in the planning work plan for quite some time that we're working with planning on, which is the admin minor major definition of what comes before the commission and the board to streamline that process and to have a robust discussion about that. We're also, we've done a fair amount of work behind the scenes on things like office to residential conversions, and I think we'll be coming forth with some zoning text changes that maybe clarify that, particularly adding potentially a live work unit as a defined use, because a lot of these conversions are taking a floor plate and sort of saying, instead of a unit that's just an apartment, it's a unit that's an apartment that also has an office space. So if people have, if you're an architect and you have 1 or 2 employees, that they're not sitting on your bed while they're working, but it's using efficiently the floor plate of an office building. So that's another one we're looking at. And then there's a number of other ones that we are, things like self-storage, other things that people have come to us and sort of said, hey, can I use my office floor plate for something a little differently? Data centers, for instance, is also on our list. And then I think throughout the rest of this year this process was always intended to be proactive, but also to be responsive. So I think there's only going to be a limited universe of new uses that we can study until we hear from people in the marketplace and sort of say, hey, I've just come up with a great idea, can I do this? And part of this process is about having the infrastructure to be able to say, okay, now let's do that quickly. So we're definitely still in proactive mode, but then I think later in the year we'll be really just waiting for new ideas to come to us so that we can react to them.
Thank you. So you'll be coming up for us again. I very much look forward to that. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to be recognized on this topic? Yes, Commissioner Hughes.
Thanks. First, from the form-based code perspective, this wasn't heard from the form-based code, although it impacts it, so I feel obliged to inform my colleagues. And generally, the form-based code members of the OG encourage as many uses as possible in the form-based code to be consistent with all other areas of the county. So there's nothing in this particular text that would infringe upon that. I felt like that first. Then for my own self as personal as a commissioner, I continue to be concerned that we go through an iterative list, as you just explained, as a reactionary function to how we deal with commercial office vacancy and in general the adaptive nature of the market, and would greatly prefer for staff to work on a performance-based system that works on externalities. Of course, the 3 major ones are smell, noxious odors, noxious noise, and noxious vibrations. Those are the 3 things that if people don't experience in their life, they really aren't concerned too much what's going on underneath them if those 3 things aren't something they deal with. On the separate note, I will be abstaining this evening because of the inclusion of the biological within the particular listed categories of uses for R&D. There are standards. I understand the various standards that are required, but I don't think that the broader conversation has been complete on that would allow for this community to allow those uses. So I will be abstaining, not opposing, but I do think we need to move towards an externality-based system that's performance-based to ensure that uses are generally aligned with what the community would expect.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners wishing to be recognized on this topic? Okay. With that, I have a motion that I will make. It is a long one. I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the County Board amend, reenact, and recodify Article 7, 8, 11, 12, and 18, Sections 3 and 4 of Appendix A, Columbia Pike Special Revitalization District Form-Based Code, and Part 9 of Appendix B, Columbia Pike Neighborhood Special Revitalization District Form-Based Code of the Arlington County Zoning Ordinance as shown in Attachment 1 of the staff report to facilitate the following. 1. Amending and renaming the existing audiovisual production studio use to audiovisual production and broadcast studio. 2. Allowing the reestablishment of the audiovisual production and broadcast studio use in the RA 4.8, R-C, RA-8, RA-H-3.2, C-1, MU-VS, C-1-O, C-O-1.0, C-O-1.5, C-O-2.5, CO, COA, CO Roslyn, CO Crystal City, C2, C-TH, C3, CR, CPFBC, CPN-FBC, CM, M1, and M2 zoning districts to incorporate references to the above referenced use into these ordinances, retail service, and commercial use categories, commercial/mixed use districts, principal use table, industrial districts principal use table, Columbia Pike Form-Based Code District Principal Use Table, Commercial Form-Based Code Appendix A Use Table, and Neighborhoods Form-Based Code Appendix B Use Table as set forth herein. Defining the audiovisual production and broadcast studio use, allowing the establishment of the research and development flex use in the RC, RA, H3.2, C1, MU-VS, CO 1.0, CO 1.5, CO 2.5, CO, COA, CO Roslyn, CO Crystal City, C2, CTH, C3, CR, CPFBC, CPN-FBC, CM, M1, and M2 districts to incorporate references to the above referenced uses into the zoning ordinance's retail, service, and commercial use categories, commercial/mixed use districts principal use table, industrial districts principal use table, Columbia Pike Form-Based Code District Principal Use Table, Commercial Form-Based Code Appendix A Use Table, and Neighborhoods Form-Based Code Appendix B Use Table as set forth herein. Defining the research and development flex use and making additional editorial changes for improved clarity and for other reasons required by public necessity, convenience, general welfare, and good zoning practice. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Sarli. The item is now with the board. Is there any discussion on the motion? Anything we need to resolve before moving to a vote?
Commissioner Schroll has a question.
Madam Chair. Madam Chair.
Yeah, sorry. Yep, that's me.
Yep. I'm fully supportive of this motion and will vote for it. It just, it wouldn't be my last full commission hearing if I didn't make one recommendation on Robert's rules, which is, Madam Chair, I would recommend that you not make motions while you're chair, and that because you would be ruling on those as chair.
Noted. I've already made the motion though, and it's been seconded, so we are going to roll with it, but I appreciate that.
Understood.
If it goes sideways, you can have someone else take over as chair.
Great. Okay. I believe we're going to move to, yes, Commissioner Peterson.
Can I ask another clarifying question, or did I miss that vote? Is it too late? I don't remember how.
We're kind of voting now, or what's your question?
So I just had a follow-up question about, like, Fairfax County doesn't allow the use of explosives classified as division.
I'm going to roll that as out of order. Sorry. Yeah, that moment passed. Okay. Are there any questions on the motion as before the committee? Could you reframe your question as a question about the motion that's before the committee? Are you sure? Okay. Then if there's no other discussion, we will move to a vote. Okay. Commissioner Begley?
Aye.
Was not ready. Hang on. Commissioner Hughes,
Abstain.
Commissioner Gearin,
Abstain.
Commissioner Weir,
Aye.
Commissioner Lantelmi,
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson,
Abstain.
Commissioner Sarli,
Aye.
Commissioner Guevara.
Guevara, close. We're getting there.
Sorry, I will get there.
Yes, it's okay. Abstain.
Commissioner Steinberger, sorry, Commissioner Schroll.
Aye.
Commissioner Steinberger, aye. The motion carries unanimously with 4 abstentions. Thank you very much for the comprehensive report.
Thank you very much.
And I believe we are ready for our next item. Madam Clerk, can you please call the next item?
Yes, and we'll give staff time to set up. Our next item, number 3, is the consideration of the following actions pertaining to 2000 North Glebe Road, which is the Sunrise Senior Living Special General Land Use Plan GLUP study. 3A is the acceptance of the 2000 North Glebe Road Sunrise Senior Living Special General Land Use Plan Study document. 3B is a request to advertise future public hearings by the Planning Commission and County Board to consider a GLUP amendment from low residential to low medium residential for the area located at the northwestern corner of North Glebe Road and 20th Street. We have 2 planning staff. Our main project manager on this is Margaret Tulix Rhodes, and we have Kelly Brown as our staff to present this item this evening.
Thank you, and I believe we will hear a staff presentation first and then applicant. Okay, staff presentation when you're ready. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Margaret Rhodes, and I'm with the Planning Division. I'll give you a brief overview of the Special General Land Use Plan study that we just completed for the Sunrise site located at 2000 North Glebe Road. In 2008, the County Board adopted a policy for consideration of general land use plan amendments unanticipated by previous planning efforts. This calls for a community review process in those instances where there is either no adopted plan or where the GLUP amendment request is inconsistent with the guidance of the relevant adopted plan. In this instance, there is no adopted plan for this area. These studies evaluate the appropriateness of the requested GLUP changes and evaluate what GLUP category or categories may be appropriate. Here is the site. It is situated at the intersection of North Glebe Road and 20th Street North, a few blocks south of Langston Boulevard. The site includes the existing Sunrise Senior Living parcel and 2 adjacent R6 parcels, one along 20th Street that is currently vacant and up against the existing Sunrise parcel, and the other is adjacent and it has a single home detached dwelling. The applicant is requesting an amendment to the general land use plan from low residential 1 to 10 units per acre to low medium residential 16 to 36 units per acre. There is also an anticipated future rezoning request from R6 to RA18. GLUP and zoning amendments would be needed to support expansion of the existing elder care use. And here we have an excerpt from the general land use plan and an excerpt from our zoning map. As you can see here, the subject site outlined in blue is low residential, 1 to 10 units per acre. And you can see in the surrounding area, there is low residential, there's public, there's government and community facilities, and northeast from the site, you can see low medium residential adjacent to the low residential. On the zoning excerpt, you can see that the site is R6. During the special GLUP study process, we developed, of course, a project webpage, and we had 2 long-range planning committee meetings. At those meetings, the LRPC was comprised of representatives from the Glebewood and Waverly Hills Civic Association, the Housing Commission, the Forestry and Natural Resources Commission, the Commission on Aging, the Disability Advisory Commission, the Transportation Commission, and the Pedestrian Advisory Committee. We had a community engagement session that was open for several weeks, and we had a total of 144 responses. Most recently, we had a 2-week online comment period on the draft study document, and we received 16 total responses. Based on the input we received during the process from the Long Range Planning Committee and the community, we developed these following guiding planning principles. They are intended to ensure that building scale, massing, and materials complement the surrounding area, that there is the provision of attractive and welcoming pedestrian level conditions established through tree conservation, landscaping, biophilic design, and underground parking. We want to make sure that access, connectivity, and safety are prioritized for all modes of travel in and around the site. We also want to make sure that sustainability and stormwater management best practices are prioritized. And we also, this was something that the LRPC requested that we add, we wanted to prioritize senior living given the need for senior housing in the Arlington community at large. On this next slide, you can see the massing of the existing Sunrise Senior Living Facility with its 35-foot height. One of the models that we developed based on the guiding planning principles is this model, which is a 4-story model with no bonus density. So you can see here it's at a 1.5 FAR for elder care, which is the maximum density. And we're just showing this as one way in which the site could redevelop. Here is another model, again, 4 stories, but we're showing a modest amount of bonus density. So for elder care, we're showing 0.25 FAR bonus density, which could allow for some potential community benefits such as green building initiative benefits. And here is another alternative where it's a 5-story building and the bulk of that height is up along North Glebe Road, which is an arterial here. You can see that this might leave a little bit more open space on the site. In terms of the preferred massing scenarios, the Long Range Planning Committee was generally supportive of the potential general land use plan amendment to low-medium residential, the guiding principles which we just reviewed, and the 3D modeling options that we just shared. Given this input, staff believes that all 3 scenarios are responsive to the proposed guiding principles. Scenarios 2 and 3 both allow for bonus density to realize community benefits that may be sought, such as green building benefits. And then as we saw of these 2 scenarios, scenario 3 might allow for additional open space as the building mass is concentrated along the arterial. And for all of these scenarios, staff recommends the building height not exceed 5 stories, given the surrounding context. And I should note that preliminary review appears to show that the number of projected trips would be supported by the existing transportation network. It's of course important to note that should a site plan project be filed, there would need to be a full transportation analysis, a much more detailed analysis. Staff conducted this study in a manner that applies several refinements to address feedback from planning commissioners and others on our recent special general land use plan studies. So one of the concerns was that the development of very detailed guidance could be more time, can be time intensive, and may result in a plan that is perhaps more detailed than is necessary to inform site plan review. The other concern was that the establishment of this planning policy through adoption of the study document may be unnecessary given the single site scope of the special general land use plan studies. And we're not talking about the plus studies here, just the general typical studies. So to address this feedback for this study, staff developed a much more streamlined and less graphically intense study document, and we're recommending acceptance of this study document. In conclusion, staff recommends adoption of the resolution to accept the special general land use plan study document and adoption of the resolution to advertise future public hearings on a request to change the amend the general land use plan from low residential 1 to 10 units per acre to low medium residential for the subject site. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe the applicant has a presentation now. Thank you.
Can everyone hear me okay? Oh. There we go. Oh, okay. Can you hear me even though it doesn't come up? It's okay. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Clyde McGraw. I'm Vice President of Real Estate for Sunrise Senior Living. I'm here to present our proposal to amend the general land use plan for 2000 North Glebe Road to allow for the potential redevelopment of the existing Sunrise of Arlington into a modern senior housing community. Before I get into the details of the project, I'd like to just take a minute to tell you a little bit about Sunrise. So at Sunrise Senior Living, we are a mission-based organization, and our mission is to champion quality of life for all seniors. In addition, we have a forward-looking vision statement, which is to create the preferred lifestyle for enjoying longer, healthier, happier lives. Sunrise is one of the largest providers of senior living in North America with nearly 275 communities. We were founded over 40 years ago in Northern Virginia, and in fact, our first purpose-built Sunrise community was Sunrise of Arlington, which we still operate today and which we will be discussing this evening. While Sunrise provides a full range of senior housing options, from independent living through skilled nursing, our specialty is in assisted living and memory care, which is what exists at 2000 North Glebe Road today, and what we would propose for the redevelopment of the site. Assisted living is for seniors who need assistance with activities of daily living, including bathing, dressing, using the bathroom, mobility, and meals, while our memory care is for seniors with Alzheimer's disease and other memory impairments. While traditionally Sunrise built only Victorian-style buildings, which I'm sure many of you have seen across the DMV, over the last 10 years, we've become much more forward-looking with our architecture. Now, each new Sunrise is designed to fit in aesthetically with each neighborhood they're built and to be much more reflective of the local design vernacular. For example, here are 4 recent Sunrise projects in different markets across the country, including Newton, Massachusetts, Burlingame, California, and Summit, New Jersey. Each building is designed to fit in within the local neighborhood. At Sunrise, we pride ourselves on being great members of the community. A redevelopment of Sunrise in Arlington would allow us to provide services for about 100 seniors at any one time and will generate about 75 local jobs. We would invest more than $70 million into the development and would strive to integrate the building into its surroundings through architectural design. We see Sunrise as extensions of the community for which they serve by engaging with local schools, religious, and community programs. Finally, through Sunrise's Living with Generosity program, our seniors are able to give back to the community. for example, by assembling lunch bags for local shelters or baby blankets for local hospitals. At Sunrise, we put the health and well-being of our residents first. In fact, Sunrise is the first and largest provider in the senior living industry to achieve the prestigious WELL Health Safety rating across our entire portfolio, which reviews our ongoing management for items such as emergency preparedness, communication with our residents and their families, and our cleaning and sanitation procedures. Sunrise is also at the forefront of senior living design. The last 2 years, we've been awarded the Argentum Senior Living by Design Award for 2 of our newest communities in Northern Virginia, in Old Town Alexandria and in Fairfax, which reviews aspects of design innovation and operational excellence. Now, looking at the existing Sunrise of Arlington site specifically, you can see it's located on the west side of Glebe Road at the corner of 20th Street, and we are just south of Langston Boulevard. When we review the Arlington market, we find there is a significant imbalance between the available supply and needed demand for our type of building. In fact, there's not been a new senior housing project built in Arlington County in over 20 years. When Sunrise estimates the needed supply within just 3 miles of the site, we estimate a need of approximately 1,300 assisted living units, while only 276 exist today. It's similar when we look at the needed supply of memory care units, which we estimate at approximately 700, while only about 100 units exist in the market today. There is clearly a great need for new senior housing in Arlington County. Here we have images of the existing Sunrise of Arlington. As I mentioned, this is our first purpose-built Sunrise, and we've been operating the community now for nearly 40 years. Unfortunately, as I'm sure everyone can imagine, there have been significant changes in the design of senior housing over the last 40 years, which has rendered the existing building functionally obsolete. It does not have the characteristics that are expected in modern senior housing. The hallways are too narrow, the bathrooms are too small and difficult to access, and there's not enough common space. Looking at the existing site plan, you have Glebe Road on the right side and 20th Street at the bottom of the page. The current building is L-shaped with a small surface parking lot and drop-off area. In addition to the current Sunrise of Arlington site, we also own the single-family home next door at 4725 20th Street, which is included in the project area. We've met with our neighbors and the local civic associations many times and have heard their concerns with the existing site that we believe we can significantly mitigate through redevelopment. Specifically, we have heard concerns regarding insufficient parking on the site and the lack of a dedicated loading area. A redevelopment would allow us to significantly increase the number of parking spaces by putting the parking below grade, as well as creating a dedicated loading area. We've also heard concerns about stormwater management in this general area of Arlington. A redevelopment here would comply with the current Arlington County stormwater management standards to help alleviate some of the current issues in the area, compared to the existing building, which when built likely had no or very limited stormwater management requirements. I do want to point out that, as staff has mentioned, the GLUP study process does not allow for a detailed discussion of building design. All of these issues that I've mentioned will be discussed in a future 4.1 site plan process before anything is built at the site. So while we cannot talk specifically about how the building will operate, the concerns that we've heard are incorporated into the GLUP study document and will be important elements of any future building design. Here we have a conceptual design of what a redevelopment of the site could look like. You'll notice that the parking's been put below grade with access off of 20th Street. For our neighbors, we've heard concerns with vehicular access off of 20th Street versus off of Glebe Road, and Sunrise is open to studying both options during the site plan review process. The existing building is 3 stories today, and our proposed redevelopment would likely be 3 or 4 stories, depending on the final massing and setbacks, et cetera. We would, of course, work with our neighbors and planning staff on appropriate design and height during the site plan process. We've also heard concerns regarding speed and safety crossing Glebe Road in this area. While this is outside of Sunrise's purview, we certainly are very open to Arlington County introducing speed calming measures in this area of Glebe Road. Sunrise is also committed to biophilic design, as it's very important for our residents. This includes the principles of biophilia, including providing a green envelope, nature-inspired forms and shapes, providing for natural light, organic patterns and processes, human relationships to nature, and sensory experiences. In addition, Sunrise is committed to tree preservation where possible. While we're hopeful that some of the trees on the exterior of the site can be preserved, the practical nature of development and construction, including putting parking below grade and introducing modern stormwater management practices, means that some trees located in the middle of the site or with extensive root structures may not be able to be maintained. However, Sunrise will of course meet the current Arlington County tree coverage requirements through the planting of a variety of native species. Finally, we've heard from many residents of Arlington County regarding the need and desire for on-site affordable housing beds. Affordable housing is challenging in senior living because although you may be able to discount the rent someone pays, you can't discount the care that they receive. That being said, we have studied the issue here extensively, and while the potential density of this site would not feasibly allow affordable beds on site here, we are currently in the site plan review process for our proposed Sunrise of South Arlington project at 716 South Glebe Road. That site does provide the opportunity for some additional density, and we are exploring with staff the ability to provide additional on-site affordable housing beds at our Sunrise of South Arlington site to fulfill our obligations for affordable housing for both that project at 716 South Glebe Road and this project. Given that the two sites are less than 3 miles apart, they are within the same catchment area and would serve the same general population. This is another item that will obviously be discussed in greater detail during any site plan review process, but given the questions that we've received, we want to be as responsive as possible at this point. Thank you very much for your time this evening. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. We appreciate the presentation and the effective use of your time. So thank you. I believe we do have public speakers on this item.
Yes, we do.
Madam Clerk, can you please call the first public speaker?
Sure. And what we'll do is call the 2-minute speakers first, and then that'll be followed by the 3-minute speakers. And our first speaker for the evening is Catherine Ginther, and I believe she's virtual.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, your time starts now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hi, my name is Kathy Ginther, and I'm new to the neighborhood. I live directly across from Sunrise, and I chose this house in particular for the quiet street, and I'm frankly just a little concerned about how the plans could change all of that. Since moving here, I've noticed that there are some issues with Sunrise that I think will likely worsen if this plan is allowed to move forward. Our street is narrow, and visibility over the hill, which you can't fully see in some of the presentations we've looked at tonight, visibility over that hill is reduced in both directions. From my vantage point directly across from Sunrise, I often observe their delivery and landscaping trucks parking illegally in front of their building, which further compromises visibility. Children and adults walk down that street throughout the day, and the walkability of this neighborhood is at risk if Sunrise is allowed to grow in size and create a garage entrance on 20th Street North. In addition, I have some concerns with the draft study documents. The proposed height and coverage limits are unclear. In one place, a height limit of 45 feet is put forward. Elsewhere, a limit of 60 feet with less coverage is discussed. It'd be helpful if staff could clarify these limits, which will be central to whether the structure fits with the existing character of the neighborhood or overwhelms it. The issue of bonus density is another concern. To my knowledge, this possibility has not been raised before now. In my view, no bonus density should be allowed for elder care facilities. Environmental improvements should be standardized without being justification for bonus density. In any event, it defeats the purpose of height and density limits. Why such limits if bonus density is then awarded? And if it is awarded, where will it go? I'm not sure how much time I have left, but that is that's pretty much all I have to say. Thank you for your time, and we can move on to the next speaker.
Thank you very much. You had 9 seconds left.
Excellent. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ann Bodine, followed by John Musso.
Good evening, Madam Chair. My name is Ann Bodine. I'm from Arlingtonians for Our Sustainable Future, and we're asking the Planning Commission to consider some amendments to include 20% tree canopy, a maximum zoning of 14-26 versus RA 818, some stormwater mitigation inside the special GLUP, and only senior living uses. There's a lot of confusion about this project, and I don't think I have enough time, but just I'll go into a few details. From the staff report in January, there were notes about stormwater runoff conditions that need to be addressed as part of redevelopment. ASF asked that this be incorporated into the GLUP in exchange for this extra density that the applicant is seeking. There's concerns about tree canopy. The special GLUP allows a higher percentage than the Chesapeake Bay Ordinance preservation, and this site has 50% canopy now. ASF asked that the special GLUP require a 20% tree canopy on this site. It's only 1 acre, but we're losing a lot of trees. There's a lot of confusion on land use and FAR in the various documents. They go from FAR of 1.25 to 1.5 to 1.75 across the models. In one instance, you say the owner wants 85 units. We have about 57 now, but you're modeling over 150 units, so I agree with the previous speaker to say we should clear up this confusion. Let's eliminate the confusion instead and just go with 14-26, which is a cap of 60 feet for the density. We were asking that you only limit this for senior housing uses to remove some confusion about flipping for multifamily use later. There's some confusion on energy plan, our comprehensive energy plan. Raising a 30-year-old building releases captured carbon and requires carbon-intense inputs. These are things that we should be avoiding. So again, 20% trees, 14-26 is maximum density, stormwater mitigation, and only senior living. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is John Musso, followed by Joanne McKee.
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. I'm John Musso, an Arlington resident and Government Affairs Manager for the Arlington Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of the Chamber, I would like to express support for both of the motions concerning Sunrise North Glebe Road that are on the docket this evening, as well as support for the project overall. As mentioned previously, Northern Virginia is currently suffering a shortage of senior housing units, and this project is a major step forward in addressing this issue. As noted, this facility is toward the end of its operational life and needs additional renovation for its continued operation, and this project would allow for a significant increase in the number of units available to seniors. Sunrise has been an integral part of North Arlington for nearly 40 years, and this project would allow them to continue to be a core part of the North Arlington community for decades to come. So we ask that you vote in favor of accepting the GLUP study document and recommending to the board that the GLUP amendment hearings be advertised, and then as this project goes forward, supporting the project as a whole. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Joanne McKee is followed by Jason Schwartz.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to raise my concerns. I'm Joanne McKee. I'm the next door neighbor to Sunrise, to the proposed development. To begin, the proposed structure in its various configurations as proposed by applicant and staff is simply too big for the site. Contrast the vision for this site with what Sunrise has proposed to develop at 716 South Glebe Road, a 2-acre site, which is twice the size of 2000 North Glebe. Planted gardens and walkways, extensive landscaping and fencing, distance from the Alcova house, and nearly 50 feet away from the nearest home. Entrances on 3 streets, including on Glebe Road, above-ground parking, fully enclosed trash and delivery within the footprint of the building, and that's a quote. The lot is basically flat, not a hill sloping downward as it is on 20th Street. I say, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. As a neighborhood, we should expect the same considerations and amenities that are being offered by Sunrise to others. We expect that the county planners and commissioners will respect our neighborhood integrity. Sunrise has existed as part of our neighborhood for over 35 years, but now wants to intrude and have an oversized presence, putting at risk what we built here. It goes beyond who gets to live where in Arlington and how many beds are available for elder care here. It's about a harmonious coexistence of different types of housing. Why must we accept a huge commercial building that doesn't comport with any of the guidelines the county purports to hold dear? Affordable housing for cost-burdened seniors, tree canopy preservation, watershed awareness as it impacts stormwater runoff, safe routes to school walkers, and more. I strongly urge the Planning Commission to put the brakes on this application for amendment to the GLUP and the proposal to rezone the site to a higher density without giving serious consideration to covenants and conditions for applicant that will protect not only our neighborhood and properties, but those of other Arlington neighborhoods that will be similarly affected in the future. Thank you very much.
Jason Schwartz is followed by William Lawson.
Hi, my name is Jason Schwartz, and we definitely need more housing supply for our seniors. Just a couple headlines that I sent in my presentation. One, senior care is crushingly expensive. Two, the U.S. senior housing market is facing a supply shortage. And three, occupancy recovery is fueled by healthy demand and delayed inventory growth for seniors housing. We definitely need this desperately. We need this housing. Northern Virginia had the 6th largest increase in residents ages 65 and over among the 50 largest U.S. metro areas. You know, this is a really great opportunity to add key housing that we need. This site is located in a great location to add more housing. Over 85,000 people already live within a 20-minute bike radius. And this location is on Glebe Road, a large arterial, where there's been a 33% decline in traffic over the last decade. This site is just an 8-minute bike ride from the Ballston Station development with 144 committed affordable units, only 8-minute bike ride away. So this could be great for someone who can live in this development that's nearing completion in Ballston. They can bike 8 minutes, work here, have opportunities for education, opportunities to send their kids. This is enabling future growth, not just for seniors, but for people to come work here and support this community. And this site is going to be extremely beneficial for the built environment. It's going to create a more walkable and pedestrian-centered environment. The frontage will provide buffer and against the loud, noisy road, provide a buffer not only for the residents and the green space that they'll newly enjoy, but also for the current residents because they'll have that nice buffer along Glebe Road. So this is really going to fit well within the urban fabric. It's not oversized at all. It's a very modest increase in size. I wholeheartedly support it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Schwartz. Our next speaker is William Lawson, followed by Cynthia Schneider.
Thank you. For the record, I'm Barnes Lawson Jr. When the county board got rid of the old zoning ordinance and adopted the new one, we were told nothing of substance would be changed. But unfortunately, a number of things of substance were changed, one of which was this use was left out of the residential categories. And when we did the artist, it was already zoned RA 615 and R1530T. So they just simply, we amended the ordinance, allowed the use in the categories, and they came forward with their use permit. The danger that the community has, and what I would like to see them protected from, is if this amendment does in fact get granted and the appropriate zoning to follow is RA 818, well, once that takes place, there's no guarantee that this use will in fact be done. Because if you have a use permit, you don't have to utilize it. You could just simply not use it and file for apartments or file for townhouses. And I think that what should have been done is just amend the ordinance and to have gone back the way it was in the old ordinance and allow it by use permit in the R6 category. You know, I've been doing this for 40 years, and when I began, frankly, I think civic associations and neighbors probably had too much involvement in the process. I think that what's happened lately is there's not enough. And so I would respectfully suggest that the way to do this is amend the ordinance and allow it in R6, and there's no danger to the community of a switch in use. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Cynthia Snyder, followed by Alice Hogan. These are virtual speakers.
Good evening. I'm Cynthia Schneider, representing the Commission on Aging. The Commission on Aging supports this project to go forward at this time. So we're in support of both actions before the Planning Commission tonight. As previously stated, there is a great need for this type of older adult housing in the county. And we appreciate the staff recognize this in amending their guiding principles for the project, being to prioritize the need to prioritize senior living arrangements because of the need for senior housing. The Commission on Aging is also appreciative of the Sunrise developers taking into account the need for some reduced cost units. And we hope that it's not totally off the table for this particular project, but we continue to look forward to working with you as planning goes forward. So thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Alice Hogan, followed by John Sauter.
Good evening. My name is Alice Hogan. I'm with the Alliance for Housing Solutions. I wanted to echo a lot of the comments that I heard from Jason Schwartz as well as from Cindy Schneider. I wanted to talk about the fact that we need every kind of housing unit in Arlington, and especially affordability. So we know that our community and our population is growing very, very quickly, and one of the biggest segments of growth is actually in people 85 and up, whom we are expecting to increase by a percentage of 65 in the next 15 to 20 years. So we're really in a crunch for housing for older people, and we know that our current stock does not have the accessible or ground level entry types of units that this growing population will need. So AHS is very much in favor of this redevelopment. It sounds like we could have 85 to 100, or even this evening, perhaps more units on this site. It does seem to be within a good scale for the area, particularly on Glebe, and keeping in mind that it's just a stone's throw from Langston Boulevard, where a lot of changes and height and density will be coming. It's very close to a church and a school, so it's well situated in a community that's not exclusively single family only. I echo what Cindy is saying and the Commission on Aging, that wherever possible, if we can get any affordability within these senior units, we know how expensive this kind of living is, and that there are thousands and thousands of people who first can't find a spot and then can't afford a spot. So anything we can do to try to cultivate those kind of opportunities in Arlington is crucial for our population. So we fully support the redevelopment and look forward to continuing conversations, particularly around affordability. Thank you.
Our next speaker is John Sauter, followed by Paul Holland.
Greetings, my name's John Sauter. I represent Glebewood Civic Association. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. So the problem we have with this study is it's really two studies. The applicant initially applied for assisted living facility rezoning and the county introduced multifamily. And that causes a great deal of concern because multifamily is not restricted in any way to be senior care living. So, and not only that, we were confused as to why it was selected because there's 4 other use cases for RA18. So if you're going to pick one selectively, and it's not tied to elder care use, then why not pick the other 4 and explore them as well? So in addition to that, the study cites the Affordable Housing Master Plan with the objectives that this amendment will help with it, yet it fails to address how these objectives will be achieved. The applicant offers market rate housing, as they have stated. Presumably the new facility would cost more than the existing facility and in effect would actually increase the cost of housing for seniors. So The other assertion is that there's a growing need for seniors to be able to age in the community, but there's no figures in the study to back this up. Everyone keeps saying there's a need for this. However, there are 700 existing assisted living units within a 3-mile radius. The Jefferson in Ballston has 26 senior condominiums for sale. The county doesn't have any way of measuring vacancy of senior care housing at all. I've asked about this. I asked about it in the prior meeting. This is an area of concern. You got to make sure that the demand is there and that people can afford this. So the Affordable Housing Master Plan. So the other thing is the study does not address openly mitigating measures. In a single section of the document, it would be great to lump these all together and understand what you're going to do to ease the burden on Glebewood. So we'd really appreciate that. The study requires a transportation analysis. The analysis performed by the county is modeled and not based on on-site specific data. I think it makes a ton of sense to do that. So in a nutshell, multifamily was never really asked for in this study. The applicant requested rezoning based on elder care use. So it's introduced into the study with none of the other uses introduced into the study. Affordable housing, it's not really addressed. I mean, it's just not squarely addressed at all. It's discussed, but there's no commitment from, the owner or the applicant. No metrics to support the demand. There's no way that Arlington County currently quantifies how much housing is available. Consider that for a minute, because Arlington has found itself in a situation where there are oversupplies of other land uses, and I'm thinking retail and commercial. So I think it makes sense to take a lesson learned here and make sure that whatever we put in place, we don't make it inaccessible for people that want to use it based on price or oversupply. No concrete mitigating measures for the neighborhood, and we would like a site-specific transportation analysis part of the Tier 2. So that was never done. Thank you.
Our last virtual speaker is Paul Holland.
Hi, good evening. My name is Paul Holland. I'm the current president of Waverly Hills Civic Association. Waverly Hills Civic Association is located immediately across Glebe Road from the site. The Civic Association the board has not taken a formal position on the project, but we do have some considerations that we will be tracking should the project move forward this evening. Those include tree preservation, including the large white pines, white oaks, and sycamores that are located on the site. There was one that was recently fell down and caused a power outage in the neighborhood. Another key concern for the Civic Association is stormwater management. As some folks I'm sure are aware, the county is in the process of purchasing single-family parcels in Waverly Hills. And given the location of the site at the top of the watershed, we are very conscious of the potential stormwater impacts on our neighborhood. Speed on Glebe Road and the safety for pedestrians, including children walking to school. We're hoping that there will be further study of the transportation and the potential for maybe even a crossing light or a speed camera on Glebe. We're conscious of the pros and cons of having a side entrance off Glebe versus 20th Road and the parking and loading considerations associated with also issues with managing deliveries and services to the site. The last two issues, architectural design. We're strongly in favor of architectural design and conscious of its impact on the residents and surrounding homes, including the scale and materials and tapering. And finally, as many affordable senior housing is a key priority for our neighborhood, and issues of accessibility as well. Thank you very much for hearing the perspective and considerations of Waverly Hills Civic Association.
Thank you. Appreciate the comments.
That's everybody.
All right. I believe we've already heard from the other commissions. We had aging and there's another commission. Yes, thank you. Does Transportation Commission have a report?
This was not before TC.
Okay. In that case, I believe we are ready for Commissioner Schroll as chair of the SPRC. Can you please give us your report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, the LRPC heard this item in several meetings, as Ms. Rhodes noted. I did circulate a memo by email last night to members of the commission. I think Ms. Rhodes, her report and her presentation this evening do a fair amount to kind of encapsulate the kind of key issues here. There was a fair amount of consensus during the LRPC process that allowing a senior living facility to redevelop on this site makes sense. There is an existing use here. So there was consensus and support for advertising the low medium residential club designation, in addition to support for advertising the study document. As was noted, I think by Ms. Rhodes and also by the applicant, this doesn't disregard some of the nearby neighbor concerns regarding traffic, parking, loading, site circulation, pedestrian access, stormwater, tree preservation, height, and transitions. The study document actually does a fair amount at this point at a high level to address those issues and note them for concerns. But I'll state that I think that those are really much better suited to be addressed at SPRC, not at the long-range planning level. A lot of these are more fine-grained. Things like the transportation study that Mr. Satter noted is something that the MMTA would require at the next stage. I think for our purposes this evening, it is good to focus on whether the study document goes far enough to encapsulate what was discussed at LRPC and in the kind of main buckets. And would that set us up for a robust process at SPRC? The kind of key topics that I think are worth discussing are as follows: the GLUP designation itself, the guiding principles, building height and design, the transportation-related issues, the environment, implementation, and then certainly any other ones that people would have. So that concludes my report, Madam Chair, and I'd yield back.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Schroll. So with that in mind, the topics that we have for discussion amongst the commission are GLUP designation, guiding principles, building height and design, transportation, the environment, implementation, and a catch-all other. Are there any other topics that any commissioners would like to move to add to that list or stick with what was covered? Yes, I can read it again. GLUP designation, guiding principles, building height and design, transportation, the environment, implementation, other. It's also the list that is in Commissioner Schroll's email. Commissioner Guevara,
yes. It's closer each time. Affordable units.
Affordable units, okay. And we will add affordable units to that conversation as well. Okay. So let's start, seeing no other topics to be added, let's start with GLUP designation. Would anyone like to be recognized on that item? Yes, Commissioner Hughes.
Thanks. Quick question for staff. And I'm sorry if I didn't see it in the staff report. Were other zoning districts considered? I'm thinking specifically like an SD designation, which is, I believe, the zoning underlying the South Arlington senior living facility. Did staff at all consider an SD designation?
We did evaluate SD, but it's focused on institutional uses, and elder care is considered a residential use in Arlington County. But we did look at that, but we're focused here on the low residential.
So the GLUP categorization for the South Arlington Gleewood site is a semi-public designation, and the site plan would in all likelihood, without a GLUP study and no GLUP change, would only have two options for rezoning. One would be S3A, which seems unlikely, and the other would be SD.
they can pursue the SD for the South Arlington project.
All right. Thank you, staff.
Sorry, chair's privilege. Follow up on that. Did you say they could pursue that for the South Arlington property, but not for the North Arlington?
Madam Chair, might I suggest it would appear that counsel for the applicant might wish to speak on this, but I will also add to it prior to his speak, if you would give me a moment. This is particular to a form, so remember, we are going to overlay the site with a GLUP designation.
Yes.
Within the GLUP designation, there are applicable zoning categories that one can opt into. The low, medium residential for the GLUP designation is the one being proposed this evening, and the zoning text will allow particular zoning categories for the applicant and the board to consider. In this case, I believe we have an RA zoning. So does that make sense? The applicant might.
Yeah, so it's the applicant, I do want to hear from the applicant, but it's applicant choice which they would pursue at either.
The board's choice ultimately on what they would allow
At either.
within the
Okay.
GLUP designation.
Within the GLUP, okay. Applicant, do you wish to speak on that question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Kedrick Whitmore. I'm with Venable. Commissioner Hughes, to your question, we considered a number of different potential GLUP designations and associated zoning designations. One of the issues with the SD is related to site area. There are certain restrictions on sites under 2 acres in the SD. That does not apply to the South Arlington site, which is over 2 acres. This one is at just over 1 acre. So there would be certain restrictions there in that zoning that would make this a difficult site to build on.
Yeah, and then Commissioner Guerin.
Just to confirm, so the applicant's saying the sole reason that they're currently requesting it is the site area restrictions within the acreage limitation of 2?
That was a consideration. I mean, we did admittedly file this 2 years ago, so all the discussions that we have had since then are not top of mind, but I know that was a consideration in taking a look at this.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I want to focus on, related to this issue, how we might address the concerns that if we do make these GLUP and zoning changes, we do them for the intended purpose being considered here. Ms. Rhodes, have we done this before?
You mean, have we limited the potential use?
At this stage?
There have been other special GLUP studies where we have indicated in the study document a preference for a certain land use, and that is what we're doing here with the guiding principle that was added after the last LRPC meeting, indicating a preference for elder care use here. But in terms of some of the conversation about the confusion over low, medium, and a potential multifamily development,
Yeah.
because this is a general land use plan high-level study, we need to evaluate all different land uses. So that is why you saw in the modeling, we saw, the potential for a multifamily or an elder care. But then as a result of what we heard from the community and the LRPC, we added the guiding principle stating the preference strongly for elder care use.
Thank you. That is my recollection from prior GLUPs we've worked on together, but I did want to get an understanding of that. And I don't know if my colleagues want to weigh in on that, the applicant, yes.
Commissioner Weir would like to respond to that.
I think that, Commissioner Guerin, I think what you're trying to get to is how do we ensure going forward at the LRPC stage or at the stage where we're at that we don't end up with an amendment to the GLUP that would allow something other than the project that we're interested in, right? That the community is interested in.
We can't actually do that given our
But
process.
what I just want to point out, right, is that this is an advertisement that the action upon which the board hears at the same time as the SPRC, right? So we actually, we don't really, I think that, I don't know that it matters a whole lot whether the conditions are applied at the SPRC stage or at the LRPC stage, because if things go sideways in the SPRC stage, that's still before the board formally acts on any change to the GLUP, right?
Absolutely. I just want to have this conversation out loud for the record. with opportunity for staff to clarify if we've misunderstood that.
Commissioner Schroll has a question.
Commissioner Schroll?
Yeah, thank you. I would just like to concur with what Commissioner Weir was saying, which is that, you know, nothing happens until the board takes action. This is merely an advertisement. And I think by adding that preference for elder care into the study document, it does hopefully give some more assurance to the neighborhood that I know had concerns about this being multifamily, that the desire expressed in the Long Range Planning Committee was for elder care on this site. The reason that people were okay with this coming forward was because of the existing use and a desire to maintain it. It wasn't to see redevelopment to multifamily generally. That was not the desire expressed among members of the LRPC. So just wanted to provide that context for those who didn't participate.
Thank you, Commissioner Schroll. So just to clarify, these proposed changes to the GLUP and the zoning are being considered now, but they would be implemented at an SPRC stage with an appropriate development that got into more detail for the proposal.
Actually, to clarify further, no action would be taken until after a full SPRC process review. So at this juncture, we're merely saying if the county board chooses to advertise that low medium residential is within the realm of consideration. So no action is made to change the GLUP at this stage, even if the county board decides to advertise it. Action would only be taken, at the county board's discretion, should there be an appropriate site plan and rezoning application at a future date.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure that we really clear that up for the community because I think you did a great job. So at this evening, we will recommend to the county board, and the county board can choose to advertise a possible change to the GLUP study. The GLUP map itself will not change. As the applicant continues to forward, they may come forward and propose a particular site that will be walked through at the SPRC plan. And at the conclusion of that, if the county board agrees, they can, at the exact same moment, approve a site plan with the rezoning and the actual GLUP change map in 3 separate actions that go forward to the board after that community process. So I just want to make sure we all walked our way through that process again so we know what we're doing tonight. So this evening, all the board is doing, if they were to approve this application, is to indicate the possibility that an acceptable site plan could come forward if it meets the general guidelines they adopt in the adoptive staff plan. With that, thank you, Commissioner Steinberg. Thank you.
Thank you. First, I'd like to align myself with my fellow commissioners here. I agree that any action we take here tonight is not making a certainty for anything going forward. It's simply saying, as has been mentioned, within the realm of possibility. That said, I also want to raise, also shows the flaws of the LRPC process. We've been up here for other LRPC, the results of other LRPCs, and every single one of them has the same issue, that the neighborhoods come forward with very, very legitimate concerns. Concerns that we also acknowledge, but they don't get addressed in the LRPC process. They are part of the SPRC process. It's very much inside baseball. It's very frustrating to the neighborhoods, and I fully appreciate that. It can be frustrating to us too, but this is the process that we go through. Nothing will be happening until we go through a full SPRC process, that we have an actual, what's called a 4.1 plan that comes from the applicant, which says exactly what they're going to be building and how they're going to be addressing all of these items. We then get to vet all of those issues, which again, are legitimate issues. I've walked that neighborhood. It's a great neighborhood, and you're right about the topography. You're right about the trees. You're right about the loading dock, where the loading needs to be, the sidewalks. All of those things absolutely have to be addressed. We will not ignore those because they are very legitimate issues that have to be dealt with in order for any project to go forward. But that said, at this stage, we can't address those. They're simply not right. This is a very high-level review of the GLUP and the zoning and whether they are possible. Only if they are possible. That's all we're doing here tonight. So like I said, I want to concur with my fellow commissioners here about what we're doing and try to give at least some assurances to the neighborhoods that this isn't over and this is not a final decision by any means. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lantelmi. Commissioner Begley, I do want to indicate we are still on the first topic and there are other topics. So Commissioner Begley, and I'd love for us to move to the next topic after that.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on Commissioner Lantelmi's comments and specifically direct to the neighborhood. As a former Civic Association president who went through GLUPs and LRPCs and SPRCs, it will be important for you to stay fully engaged in this process, and I recognize that this is not necessarily your expertise, that many of you have busy lives, and this becomes like a full-time job on the side, but do not get discouraged. I will say, having sat through many SPRCs later, that the original plan that comes in is oftentimes very much changed in the end based on your input. So don't be discouraged tonight, but please hang in there. And I will say that this group does hold all the things that Commissioner Lantelmi just said at a very high level. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Begley. Okay, the next topic is guiding principles. Oh, you wanted the last topic, didn't you? Commissioner Peterson.
Thank you. I also wanted to say, as the SPRC chair, while we might not be getting into the details tonight and making any decisions about the details tonight, we did all hear your feedback so far, and one of us will be the project chair of this SPRC if this does get approved tonight and by the county board. So your feedback tonight does impact what will happen with the SPRC, and then you'll just get a chance to say it again in a few months' time. So we've heard it, and we will keep that in mind as the process, if it does continue to move forward. Thank you.
I will take chair's privilege and align myself with all of the comments from the other commissioners. Thank you. Guiding principles, topic number 2. Commissioner Guerin?
I wonder why we didn't explicitly call out tapering to the single-family neighborhood.
So in the study document, we do talk about the importance of context, height. That is indicated in the study document. In this section on...
I saw the part building scale massing complementing the surrounding area. But in the past, we've called out tapering.
I think that that's implicit in making sure that the building is appropriately designed to fit with the context.
Again, this is something that would probably be wisely adhered to when we do get a specific development proposal that comes forward with reference to that this was the sort of concern that was raised during the discussion.
There is a specific recommendation for tapering in the second bullet. It talks about the 4 stories in certain areas, buffering, the different height, minimizing shadows, et cetera.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners wishing to? Yes, Commissioner Sarli?
I'll just second or associate myself with Commissioner Guerin's comments. I think I read the text and I saw the models, and there was a little bit of a disconnection there. So I think if we are going to look at shadow studies, the massing needs to be towards 20th and Glebe. That's where the height needs to be, and then taper towards the neighbors.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to be heard on guiding principles? Okay. Building height and design, which I think could also be a place we talk about tapering. But if we've already generally covered that, I think as a general sense of this commission, we look to tapering to make sure that we are fitting as best we can within the surrounding community. So I think that tapering will continue to be something that comes up again with this project in whatever format it moves forward, if and when that happens.
Yeah.
Yes, Commissioner Lantelmi.
It is appropriate that we cap the height that we have here, talking about at most 50 feet along Glebe Road. I think that is correct. And we should continue that going forward, give at least those assurances. We've had special GLUP studies in the past where we've also limited the height going forward for when we get to the SPRC stage.
Thank you. Anyone else for building height and design? Oh, yes, sorry, in response.
Thank you. I'd
Apologies.
just like to clarify that in the study document, we discussed the height as being no greater than 5 stories.
Would that translate to like the 55 feet then, or 60 feet?
It could vary. I think that's the type of finer grain detail that could be discussed further at SPRC.
Thank you.
I want to align myself with those comments. I also had some questions about the height being in stories versus feet. Thanks.
Commissioner Hughes?
Just for reference, the SD category is a 60-foot height limit, so it's not out of line with what would be generally expected at a similar site. 75? I think it's 60.
While they debate that, Commissioner Weir?
When we have a 60-foot height limit, remind me that that does not usually include utility suites. Is that correct?
Could you repeat that? I didn't hear.
So if the ordinance says that there's a height limit of 60 feet, right, is that the height of the tallest part of the building, or is that the height exclusive of things like utility suites and other
I understand.
mechanical?
So,
Commissioner Weir, this is Matt Pfeiffer with the Planning Division. So building height is measured from average site elevation, and it is exclusive of mechanical penthouses. It goes to the main building height, main roof height, excuse me.
I'm not going to go any further down the SPRC path on this. Thank you. But thank you for the information.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to be heard on building height and design? Okay, transportation? I will recognize myself for transportation. I think it's important that given the constraints of the site as we move forward, and I don't want to get into SPRC territory too much, but I'll give myself some leeway because I can. I think it's important that we do look at both access opportunities from 20th Street and North Glebe, and I am pleased that the applicant indicated a willingness to do so. I think we want to, given the size of the site and some of the other constraints and neighborhood concerns, and along with that, we look at what would be best in both scenarios and how that can impact. I do also want to recognize that I am pleased to hear that part of the consideration on a future site design would be undergrounding the parking, because that is something that we are moving towards across the county, and I think that is a great benefit where we can not just have surface parking, but really move to have that as an undergrounded option.
Commissioner Schroll has a question.
Commissioner Schroll, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question for Ms. Rhodes about the access off of 20th Street for this site. Given that it's a state road, that Glebe Road is a state road, I'm wondering if staff has had any conversations with the state on that at this stage. And if not, if you could speak to kind of when in the process following the filing of a 4.1 staff might have those conversations.
I believe that would typically be discussed later in the process when there is a site plan application to review. If there is a desire to have more discussion on this, I can turn to Sergio Veracocchia, who is on the line from DES.
Hi, good evening, everybody. That's right, what Margaret had said. We typically coordinate with VDOT somewhere in the 4.1 approval to give them a heads up once we have a fully vetted MMTA, so it's a multimodal traffic assessment. And depending on the changes to the access to the site, we either give them a cursory review or the applicant will have to work with VDOT for some type of access management exception.
Excuse me, for the record, please identify yourself.
This is Sergio Veracocchia with DES.
Thank you.
That's helpful. So yeah, I just want to make sure that folks in the neighborhood know and other, interested parties that, this is not necessarily fully in the county's hands. So even if the county thought this was a good idea, they do need to negotiate with VDOT on this. And that is something that has happened along Glebe Road for other sites. So that wouldn't be just particular to this site, but something to consider, as we move to the next process.
Thank you, Commissioner Schroll. Anyone else wishing to be recognized on transportation? Okay. The environment. Commissioner Hughes?
Thanks. First question I have is for the applicant. So this is your first building and it was built 40 years ago, correct? Is that right?
Yes, it was our first purpose-built building. They operated a couple single-family homes as assisted living, but this was the first purposely designed and built assisted living building that Sunrise built.
Okay. And you generally, I presume, have engineering studies by professionals to determine life cycle awareness of your buildings and how they're doing. Is that correct? Do you perform an annual maintenance sort of regime or a 5-year plan to determine maintenance needs and rehabilitation and recapitalization requirements of buildings?
Yes, that's correct.
So is this building reaching its sort of end of service life? Because generally speaking, with stick-built construction, which I assume these are all stick-built construction, somewhere between 40 and 50 years of major recapitalization is generally required.
That's correct. This is a stick-built building. However, more recently, we typically only build out of concrete.
That's excellent to know. Would your intentions to be in a future development to build in steel and concrete?
Yes.
Very interesting. Okay, thank you. So I just want to point this out that we all hate change, but the change in our community is required by, generally speaking, how the methodology of construction is done. And by building in steel and concrete in the future, it'll be very less likely that you will redevelop that site in 40 to 50 years. And instead, my own daughter, who's 8, will be a very old lady by the time you're back to bringing the banker to the building. So this is a good news story, but it also means as we think about the 5-story limit we are imposing, we are not building a 40-year limit on this building. It will be there for 60 to 70 years minimum. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to be heard on the topic of the environment? Mr. Guerin?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Unsurprisingly, I'm going to weigh in and encourage you to retain as many of your mature trees as you can. They serve as a nice buffer to the community in the condition that they're there. Also, I guess I'd like a little clarification on the comment that I heard that there's 50% tree canopy coverage now. We're only requiring 20%. I do know that we have some limitations as a county and a Dillon Rural State as to how much we can require. So I don't know if staff can weigh in on that, but I would certainly encourage you to add as much greenery as possible. It sounds like in your presentation that's part of your plan. One of the things that we encouraged when we brought forward the concept of biophilia before the county adopted the resolution to join the Biophilic Cities Network was that tree canopy is a laudable goal, but a layered landscape can also provide a lot of viable greenery on site, providing a lot of the same benefits that people get from regular access to nature. So yes, your canopy trees, but also your understory trees, your woody shrubs, your vines, and so on. And then was there just a misunderstanding, Ms. Rhodes, with the requirement on the tree canopy, or with the statement that right now there's 50%, but we're only going to require 20%?
I think that we need to look at that further, but we would make sure that any regulations are complied with through the site plan review process. But in terms of the high-level guidance that we have in our study document, we're encouraging the retention of trees where possible, additionally, new large canopy trees should be planted. Green spaces and landscaping are important for visual and noise attenuation, buffering, softening transitions, supporting wildlife, flora, and fauna, opportunities for conservation of trees, et cetera. But in terms of a specific number, I think that will be something that's determined through the site plan review process. I see the Urban Forest Master Plan recommends 25% tree canopy for urban residential sites such as this. But again, I think a definitive number would need to either be determined by DES regulations or Chesapeake Bay regulations or whatever pertinent regulations there are, and/or through the negotiations through the SPRC process.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lantelmi.
And I think we can also segue into stormwater because that's environmental.
Yes.
This, and, I walk the site. Yeah, this is a it's the high point of the neighborhood. There is definitely stormwater issues throughout this area. As Mr. Holland mentioned, water is going to be flowing down. It's a very steep slope moving away from this. I'm assuming that given that this is a 25-year plus old project, that back then stormwater was simply not considered the way it is now. So I am assuming also that however we redevelop this, whether it's this or somebody else, there will be a much more robust stormwater plan than exists right now on that property. And that we will not be having masses of water flowing off worse than what happens now. And in fact, it should be dramatically better than what there is now. We don't have somebody from DES here, but we have significantly tightened up our stormwater requirements over the past 25 years. This will have to comply with the Chesapeake Bay Ordinance. So we have numerous additional standards in place that did not exist when this original building was built. So stormwater will be a very, very large part of this plan going forward that will be considered at SPRC stage. Am I correct on those statements?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. I believe Commissioner Begley and then Commissioner Sarli.
Yeah, I just wanted to align myself with Commissioner Guerin's comments about tree preservation. So I'll be looking for that. Thank you.
Before I go to Commissioner Sarli, I will also align myself with the tree preservation comments. I live somewhat close to the North Glebe location, and I was very sad when the very large tree went down.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will associate myself with Commissioner Lantelmi's comments and concern with the stormwater runoff. I want to be on the record right now as strongly advising the applicant to use smaller windows and a high level of environmental energy efficiency, skin in particular, and of course to move away from any gas uses since we're talking about the environment. I think that's it for now.
Isn't it a little premature for that? Until we have a 4.1, we can't really know about implementation. All right. Or are we talking about something different?
Commissioner Schroll, would you like to explain why you added the topic of implementation to this list?
Yeah, I think we've already kind of covered that topic, which was the kind of colloquy that Commissioner Weir went through about how the implementation of this is something that's delayed. That we're really advertising the future GLUP amendment. I think it's just making sure that we cover that ground, and I think it's already covered.
Thank you for the clarification.
Excellent. With that clarification, does anyone still wish to be heard on implementation? Yes, Commissioner Begley.
Yeah, I just have a question for the applicant, and it may not be appropriate in this category, but what happens to the residents who live there now during construction? Where do they go?
The residents that are there now will be able to move into other Sunrise facilities in the area. And then once the building is rebuilt, they'll be welcome to come back.
Follow-up question. I'm going to ask a follow-up question to Commissioner Begley. I imagine that you've done this at other Sunrise locations before, so there's some sort of a streamlined, very helpful process for these folks, because I'm a young adult and moving is traumatic, and I can't imagine it's going to be like more fun having to do it much older. Okay, so that's there's a good process for that?
The answer is yes. It is something we've done in several instances, and we do have a very thorough process. For example, the existing Sunrise of Fairfax was also one of our original buildings, almost 40 years old, wood built, that was redeveloped a few years ago into a modern steel and concrete building. And this process was put in place for the current residents who were relocated to other Sunrises and then welcomed back to after construction.
Okay, and just ballpark for me, how long were they quote unquote displaced from their?
The construction timeline here, of course, is not set up, but 18 to 24 months.
Okay.
In addition, I'll just mention that once we had more surety in going forward with the process, we would, of course, stop welcoming new residents into the facility. So at some point, there would naturally be less people because we'd stop moving people in, so less people would have to move.
Okay, and you're keeping people in, because I think one of the most important things is to have them retain in as close to the community that they're familiar with, and family and whomever, so there is a geographic radius that you would look at in terms of keeping people within a certain distance?
Of course, yes. We have existing facilities or communities in Bluemont Park in Arlington, as well as in Falls Church, McLean Village, many in the area. So yes, we would keep them local.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you to Commissioner Begley for raising that point. Commissioner Peterson.
I have a question about implementation, which is just that, Mr. McGraw, I know you mentioned wanting to be a good neighbor, and that's important to you. So do you currently have, or will you have, a liaison for this process where neighbors can call you and ask questions and/or report vendors who are illegally parking on the street so that we can get those situations resolved quickly?
Absolutely. The community is welcome to reach out to me personally anytime. And of course, our existing team on site, including the executive director, are also always available to knock on the door, make a phone call. I'm happy to provide her information as well. So if there are existing issues, they can reach out to the community directly.
Thank you. Any other topics regarding implementation? Okay. Let's go to affordable housing, and then last will be kind of other as a catch-all if anything wasn't covered. Yes.
Hi, yes, thank you. This may be out of scope since we're so earlier on in the process, but I am curious for the applicant. I understand that you mentioned that you can lower rents, but you can't lower the price of care, and that you are going to potentially put some affordable units for more of those to be in South Arlington, but not in the North Arlington location. Is that correct?
It's something we're currently discussing with staff, yes.
Okay. I think it is concerning to me because perhaps it's going to keep emulating the North versus South divide, where you are putting this lower, affordable units in the South, but not in the North, and yet you're asking for increased density in the North. So, if we're talking about economies of scale, wouldn't it allow, if you allow for higher density, wouldn't it also allow you for more affordable units to be in the North Arlington location?
That's a very fair question. So even with the density that we're requesting, it's still, in reality, a very small building, at least for new Sunrise standards. I think our requested density is only 76 to 78,000 square feet. And the fact of the matter is these buildings are extremely expensive to build and to operate. And so that size building, once you get below a certain amount of market rate units, it no longer becomes feasible. So in this case, we have a very low amount of density compared to our normal projects in South Arlington, where we have more density available. The project there could absorb affordable units while still allowing the project to be feasible. In addition, the two sites, although technically, yes, North and South Arlington, are in fact less than 3 miles apart. They're on the same road. And so we would consider that to be the same catchment area to serve the same general population.
So am I okay to understand then that as of right now, the North Arlington would not have any affordable units? It would only be in South Arlington, given sort of, yes, sorry.
Sorry, just to add one thing. I mean, this site, irrespective of what we talk about here today, will still be subject to the county's affordable housing conditions in the zoning ordinance. So any project that's over a 1.0 FAR is subject to the requirements to either pay into the AHIP fund, provide units on site or off site elsewhere. So it's kind of in that context that we're of that portion of the ordinance that we are talking about this use of potentially some more beds in the south to help fulfill that obligation that's generated on the north. But it is something that's provided for in the ordinance. It's not used very frequently, which is why we're having a lot of discussion with staff about it. But it is there. It does exist.
Good. I just wanted to understand a little bit more what has been explored and whether some of what you're proposing may either help or not help some of the inequities that have been historically present in Arlington. So, thank you.
Commissioner Hughes.
Thank you. I want to continue this conversation. First of all, for clarifying for the record, since Counselor for the applicant chose to bring up the existing zoning ordinance, there are 3 options for all categories of options: on-site units, nearby units, and cash. And almost exclusively, nearly every development in the 8 years I've been on this commission has chosen cash, unless they are an affordable housing nonprofit developer who chooses to do the on-site units, which is just a method of their how they work. So I want to make that for the record. I second the commissioner's comments and want to go further on them, if you don't mind, and a question for staff now. Let's just talk about the current thing we heard from the applicant this evening, which was, let me be sure I understand this, South Arlington's senior Sunrise Living Facility, which is a GLUP site, semi-public, requesting a rezoning for SD, which is a by right choice within that existing GLUP category. And we're hearing this evening a rezoning and a reglupping. And a reglupping is the only time in a residential building where we have the, I don't know the best word to use it, influence to ensure that on-site affordable units are delivered with a project. Yet our plan that we push forward on design guidelines does not strongly encourage the co-location of on-site affordable units in a site that's nearly potato artillery distance from Langston Boulevard. Can staff elaborate on what I've missed in that comment?
I don't think you've missed anything. I think you've identified some good points.
So I won't hear this site when it comes before this major commission. I will simply state that I'm almost can count, I suspect, on the toes and fingers on the commissioners at the table, the number of affordable units that we have that are located both north of Langston Boulevard and north of I-66. And this is almost in those 2 categories. It's not quite, I get it. It's about 500 yards shy, but it's almost there. And it's elder care. Like, it's the easiest affordable housing to convince a community to accept. And we are not taking this opportunity. Chair Dorsey this past week used the term neighborhoods of opportunity to describe, rightfully so, why the county board chose to take the 93 units with 99-year affordability at Crystal House versus the approximate 27 units with 30-year affordability at the Americana site. I'm not seeing that type of logic played out here this evening. And further to the commissioner's point, I will simply say that even putting forward a plan that might be in the same catchment zone, because I certainly would be a possible contender for senior living when I'm 75 or 80 years old and would consider each of them equally. It's entirely different census tracts, entirely different parts of the community, and entirely different issues that are resorted. So I hope staff thinks carefully about how we take this forward. I don't plan to support this evening's position. I plan to abstain. I almost am at the no, and I might be convinced by questions from my fellow commissioners this evening. But the point is that staff's failure to come forward with either a strong statement of how affordable housing will be part of Sunrise Senior's plan for an inclusive community in areas where it's otherwise not provided, or some other method, I don't see it. I don't see it in this plan. So thank you, Commissioner Steinberger, and I yield the floor. Unless staff's, Commissioner.
Yeah, I can just follow up on one point. I mean, we don't have a specific principle looking for affordable elder care in this project, but one of the reasons for that is that there is a study that the county will be initiating to look at how to facilitate more affordable elder care units. And there is a bullet point in the study document that notes that further guidance may be forthcoming that could inform the review of potential site plan. So at this time, we felt it was premature to come out with a specific policy statement on affordable housing in an elder care use, but certainly kind of included it as a placeholder once there's more specific guidance that could inform a site plan.
Yeah, this is something that I've noticed in the newspapers in the past month or so about elder care. You are charging market rates. The unit and the care are all balled up into one price. Is that correct?
No, they are charged separately.
They are charged separately. Yes. When one of your residents exhausts their personal funds, they can go on Medicaid. Does Sunrise accept Medicaid, or are those residents required to leave?
No, we are private pay only. We do not accept Medicaid.
Wait, what was that again?
We are private pay only. We do not accept Medicaid.
So if somebody is there and they exhaust their funds, they then are required to leave?
To be perfectly honest, the operations of how that's handled are beyond my purview and expertise at the company. But well before that was to happen, they have a financial review of all of our residents, and we have many options to reduce costs for our residents, including moving from a 2-bedroom to a 1-bedroom to a studio. We also have a number of units that are shared by seniors, which brings the cost down significantly. So we're often able to find that there are creative ways to allow people to stay in place.
Okay, well, we're going to want to know more about that going forward if we get to the SPRC stage, because that's part of affordability. When somebody does reach that point, there were some newspaper stories recently, with definitely horror stories about that. So how you deal with that and maybe some statistics on that will be very useful in our looking at these applications. And that's actually for both Sunrises. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lantelmi. Anyone else? Okay, yes, Commissioner Begley.
Yeah, I just want to expand on Commissioner Lantelmi. So these units, this place will be at market rate. So if we're lucky enough, for those of us who've had financial planners and have worked our butts off and hopefully have a big enough retirement account that we can afford this, but studies are showing that that is becoming less and less likely, especially in an expensive place like this. So it's almost unconscionable to not be thinking about affordable units here. And you're going to hear a lot more about that as this process goes on. So I highly encourage you to reconsider that. Thank you.
I have a follow-up question. When we're talking about affordable units, either on this site or at the Sunrise South site, does the affordable aspect only apply to the rent aspect of it, and it wouldn't apply to discounted medical services? Because I'm just imagining that somebody who qualifies for affordable housing probably isn't going to have the wherewithal to pay full price for the medical services, so then nobody's going to use those rooms. They're just going to sit empty because they can't pay for the more expensive portion of this deal.
I think that's been part of the struggle, is that I don't know that that's defined by the county and the zoning ordinance. I mean, everything that we look at when we say affordable is based on AMI, right? I mean, that's what we use as the metric, is the ability for people at a certain AMI to afford the rent. I don't know how that gets calculated and rolled in. It's certainly, from our perspective, made the calculus more complicated. I don't know if the study that Ms. Brown alluded to will take that into account, but honestly, we don't have an answer for that.
I'm going to recognize myself. I think this has been a productive initial conversation among the commission, and I appreciate the applicant's willingness to engage in this conversation. I understand that it is very early to be knowing what that looks like, and that when it comes to affordable housing options for the type of service and site that we're discussing, it is more complicated, and there are some factors that there may not be easy answers for. I think that it is both very critical that we figure out a way to provide affordable housing for our, an aging elderly population in the county, and we figure out what that looks like, but also recognizing that this is a more complicated scenario because you're talking about both care and rent, and what that looks like, having that as an open conversation. It doesn't, I think there needs to be that's going to be an ongoing conversation and a level of trust as we sort of figure out what that looks like. And I hope to continue to engage with that conversation as, the project, if an SPRC does develop for the North Glebe site, as we move forward with the, discussions for the South Glebe site. And I think that I appreciate having that conversation in an open manner. I don't know that it's going to change the hearts and minds of very many commissioners on this bench, dais, whatever. But I do think that it is an important conversation to be had. And I appreciate that it has started this evening. So thank you. Any other topics to be heard on this evening? Yes.
Well, this is a question for staff. I'm thinking about this project not in the context of, but in conjunction with the YMCA project and some of the houses of worship that have redeveloped recently. And a common thread is facilities that are surrounded on 2 or 3 sides by low-density residential that were built in the 80s, give or take a half decade, and whose buildings are coming up on end of life and are likely to want to continue offering the same program when the building comes up on end of life, but are almost certainly, like these projects, like the ones that I've mentioned, almost certainly going to aspire to the more urban form, and may or may not have ideas for how to finance that, or just want to provide more of what they're providing, and where the expectations for zoning don't match, and for land use don't match the urban form that these buildings, that are coming up on end of life are going to look like. And I'm not expecting an answer to the question tonight, but I can't help but wonder how many more of these kinds of projects are we going to see? How many facilities were built in the 80s and are going to not have the open air parking lot and become a much bigger whatever it is. And my request of staff is that y'all put some time into thinking about whether or not that's a trend that we're likely enough to face, that we should be mindful of some SOPs and or trying to identify the population of potential future projects. If you want to weigh in on that, I'm perfectly welcome to. But again, I don't expect that there's an answer to anything that I said on that one. So thanks.
Okay, we're going to move on. Anything else in the other category? Okay. Commissioner Schroll, do you have a motion?
I do, Madam Chair. I have 2 separate ones, so I'll move the first one. I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the County Board adopt the resolution to accept the 2000 North Glebe Road Sunrise Senior Living Special General Land Use Plan Study document as contained within the staff report dated April 24th, 2023.
I second.
Thank you. Moved by Commissioner Schroll, seconded by Commissioner Lantelmi. Commissioner Schroll, would you like to speak to your motion?
Just briefly, I think, so, as we noted, a lot of the concerns for the neighborhood are at least, acknowledged in the study report and are things that, as we discussed this evening, can be addressed at SPRC in further detail. So just kind of wanted to reiterate that point and certainly thank staff for their work.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on this motion? Commissioner Begley, are you seeking recognition?
No.
Oh, okay. Oh, you're just getting ready to vote. Okay, seeing no hands raised for discussion on the motion, we will move to the vote. Commissioner Begley, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes?
No.
Commissioner Guerin?
Aye.
Commissioner Weir?
Aye.
Commissioner Lantelmi?
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Sarli?
Aye.
I'm going to try one more time. Guevara?
Yes, I'm telling you every single time.
Commissioner Guevara? How do you vote?
Yes. Inflection point helps. I abstain.
Abstain, okay. Commissioner Schroll?
Aye.
And I will vote aye as well. The motion passes 8-1 with one abstention. And Commissioner Schroll, you indicated you have a second motion?
Yes, Madam Chair. I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the County Board adopt resolution to the staff report dated April 24th, 2023 to advertise future public hearings by the Planning Commission and County Board on dates concurrent with those for consideration of the future site plan and rezoning applications to consider a GLUP amendment from low residential 1 to 10 units per acre to low medium residential for the area located at the northwestern corner of North Glebe Road and 20th Street North.
I'll second.
Thank you. Motion is made by Commissioner Schroll and seconded by Commissioner Lantelmi. Would you like to speak to your motion, Commissioner Schroll?
No, Madam Chair, I think we discussed it earlier this evening.
Understood. Would anyone like to speak to this motion? Okay, then we'll move to the vote as Commissioner Begley is ready, I can tell. Commissioner Begley, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes?
Abstain.
Commissioner Guerin?
Aye.
Commissioner Weir?
Aye.
Commissioner Lantelmi?
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Sarli?
Aye.
Commissioner Guevara?
Aye.
I'm getting better at
I'm
this.
sorry, I was saying aye to you, but I abstained.
You abstain. Got it. Understood. I follow. Commissioner Schroll?
Aye.
I will vote aye as well. The vote passes. The motion passes 8-0, 2 abstentions. Any other motions, Commissioner Schroll, or anyone else?
No, that concludes the motions on this, Madam Chair.
Okay, excellent. I believe that wraps up item number 3 on our agenda. We are now into PC business. So before we deal with minutes and such things, we do want to recognize that we have folks coming and going onto the commission. Commissioner Guevara, hello. I'm going to get better at that. Thank you. This is her very first commission meeting, so welcome. We're very excited to have some new blood. Yay, because we are losing some blood. So Commissioner Hughes and Commissioner Schroll, this is each of their final meetings this evening. Commissioner Schroll is virtual. Commissioner Hughes is right there. So Commissioner Schroll, you don't get cookies. But hey, there's cookies. So have cookies. Delivered from Insomnia Cookies approximately 1 hour ago. So yay.
But Commissioner Schroll probably does know a little about insomnia right now.
Yes. Well, there's that. But anyway, oh, they're good.
That I do.
Actually, I know this company because I knew the people founded it. Anyway, so yeah, there's that. So have cookies, pass, there should be. And I'm supposed to make a motion about minutes, or no, someone else is supposed to make a motion. Can someone?
Can we say something about?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, or we can do that now. Yeah, talk about, yes, Commissioner Guerin, then Commissioner Peterson. Let's have it.
Excellent. Thank you, Madam Chair. So Commissioner Schroll and Commissioner Hughes, I've actually written down a few notes, so bear with me here. So I want to thank you on behalf of all of us, for your 8 years of service, 8 years, leading public engagement processes, welcoming the community, shaping development for the better, to include unheard voices, accommodate multiple perspectives, and balance limited resources. You've both displayed a positive attitude and professionalism and inspired all of us here to give our best. You've been integral to improving our commission's relationship with the community, trust in the engagement process, and creating developments in open spaces, public and private, that are better for your involvement. You've both distinguished yourselves as leaders in this environment, stewards of our public resources, and tirelessly giving of your time and thoughts. And I know one of our former chairs, one of my colleagues had tracked his hours the year he was chair, and he estimated 800 hours of work on PC. So we know this is a lot of work. We're here with you. So during their tenure, James, you served on Transportation Commission, led the LRPC more than a year, including chairing special GLUPs, and chaired many, many SPRCs, and served as vice chair and chair. And Stephen, you led the OG for years and many, many, many SPRCs. And even through all of that, you both met serious milestones in your own lives while you were on here. James, you got married when you were on the Planning Commission, and then bought a house, changed jobs, had a baby. And Stephen, likewise, you've expanded your family. Now you have 3 beautiful children and a dog, and working on your house. So very proud to have you both as community leaders the last 8 years, and to work with you, and happy to have had your companionship and friendship on here as well. And finally, I know this is not the last step in your work as public servants, and look forward to seeing all the great things that you both go forward and do next. So thank you.
Can you pass the cookies? Thank you. Yes, take a cookie, pass a cookie. Commissioner Peterson, did you? Oh, you wanted Commissioner Gearing to be recognized. Oh yeah, I don't think we're going to top that.
He has business.
Trying to figure out. I think I want this.
You want to line yourself up for the question?
Yes, Commissioner Begley.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly want to align myself with everything that Commissioner Guerin said, but add 2 things, one for each. For Commissioner Schroll, being our resident parliamentarian has been, certainly as when I was chair, it was a boon to have you there as a backstop to make sure things were being done right. So thank you so much for that, in addition to all the other things you've done on the commission during my tenure here. And for Commissioner Hughes, how many times, 2 years, 3 years after you've said something, I go, darn, he was right. Or, you know, he had a great point. So I will definitely miss that from you, Commissioner Hughes.
Commissioner Begley?
Yeah. So at his final SPRC, last week, or I can't remember, we did do a little something there, but I think most of us here can see, especially in the affordable housing things, that all the times that you've stepped forward and said things that has really inspired all of us. And, you know, I hope that we can keep that up in your absence, because that has been super important. And, you know, that lives beyond you and folks who obviously aren't as, you know, need that kind of assistance. And to Commissioner Schroll, gosh, I met him back when BVSCA, he was the president of Balsam, Virginia Square Civic Association back when I think we were down to like 5 members, including him. And he brought in a vice president, and they put a website together and everything. So we watched him there. And then he went on to the CivFed, and then he went on to transportation, and then he went on to the Planning Commission. And we always kind of thought that he would wind up as a board member. Don't do it. But at any rate, so to see you in your new chapter with, you know, a baby, and again, as Commissioner Lantelmi said, for those of us who really never had time to read Robert's Rules of Order, I know we're going to miss you there, because half the time we're like, okay, that sounds good, let's do it. So congratulations and good luck to you, and thank you for all the opportunity to observe you over the years in the various roles. So.
Feel free to come back anytime. You want to do, pro bono parliamentarian, it's already pro bono.
Madam Chair, you're not on.
Feel free. I'm loud enough, I think you can hear me. But anyway, please come back, share your wisdom on an ongoing basis. We will love to hear from you. I'd like to recognize each of you to say a few final words, and then we'll finish out our business and leave. Commissioner Stroll?
Yeah, thank you. Well, first want to start by, thanking the commissioners that, said all those kind words about me and my colleague. It's been an honor to have served on the commission these past 8 years, leading PFRC, LRPC, serving as vice chair and chair. It's been a very rewarding experience, and I hope in some small way that I've left Arlington a little bit better than I found it. It's been a pleasure working with staff, members of the other commissions and organizations, applicants, civic associations, certainly residents, and of course, my planning commission colleagues. To Commissioner Hughes, who is, as we all know, this is his last hearing as well. I want to congratulate you for your 8 years of service, and as Commissioner Bagley rightly noted, you've really been a champion of affordable housing. When we first got on the commission, Commissioner Steve Cole really drilled into my head that you need to do a few things. And one was to stand up for what you believed in and do it each time. And you certainly have lived that. I want to thank Ms. Johnson for all of your support and assistance and guidance over my tenure. As I conclude here, maybe perhaps a few words of guidance. When I first joined the commission, Steve Cole said that being a good planning commissioner took about 4 years, and said that you're really only as good as what you know. Our power as a commission is really the power of persuasion. Most of what we accomplish is in our subcommittees and really not at this hearing dais that you're all at this evening. So to that end, I really encourage you to go and do as much as you can, learn as much as you can. I know there's a lot to do. It can get overwhelming, particularly for those who have young families. But you'll be more effective the more you know. So get to know the site plan conditions and the zoning ordinance and comp plan elements. Get to know those things, and please dive into the details. The details matter. I am leaving the commission at the end of May, but I'm not gone, and I'm happy to answer questions and be a sounding board to the extent that that's useful. So thanks again. It's been a pleasure sharing with you all.
Thank you. Commissioner Hughes, if you would like to say a few words.
I want to second everything that Commissioner Troll said. It's my appointment buddy. He and I, what you don't know is we carpooled a lot when we first started, and so I really do appreciate the wisdom he shared with me. All of you I consider to be great friends and colleagues, and it is how we treat each other is so amazing. I love all of you, and I've loved all of the commissioners I've ever worked with, even those I disagree with most profoundly and frequently. So it was not, it's not meant for Commissioner Gearing. And so it is through dialogue, it is through knowledge that you're able to shape our community and leave it just an inch better than we got it. And I do want to thank a few people, Commissioner Fornash for lying to me so that I actually did join the commission, Commissioner Iacomini for being there on the first day to introduce me to the commission because I had no idea what I had signed up for, and it is horrible. For all of you for never appointing me as chairman, I really do appreciate that because I send my condolences to all of you every time, those of you who accept that burden, and appreciate those of you who do. And then my final thought for each of you, and I'm sure I've left somebody off, is we serve a purpose in the state code. There are, I think, 20 to 30 different commissions in the county. Some of us are empowered by state code, hence the reason we get sued. Others are strictly advisory. And state code is the bounding function. And we have to remember that. And so to the extent that you're able to ensure that technicalities under state code are not glossed over and the facts are shown to the community to be true, is your ability to actually shape discussion and move forward. And it's so cool for me. The thing I love most about my job is, like, this past weekend I was in Crystal City, and 2 buildings are being built right there, 1900 Crystal Drive. And I can tell my kids, hey, Daddy helped those buildings get built. Like, that's really cool. And so it's really a rewarding job, and we need more commissioners, and we need broader commissioners. So I appreciate all of your time and effort, and you guys know where to find me. So thanks.
Thank you both. We do still have a little bit of business to take care of, so let's get through that. Can someone please make a motion with regards to the April 10th meeting minutes?
I ask unanimous consent to accept the minutes of the April 10th, adopt the minutes of the April 10th Planning Commission meeting.
Without objection, so moved. Thank you very much.
So adopted.
So adopted? With regards to staff reports, commission reports have already been heard from, I believe they circulated for PFRC, LRPC, ZOCO. Did you send a report?
No, there's nothing to report. We didn't have a meeting in April, and I would just put a blurb for the May 9th ZOCO, which it'll be food related. You might want to go.
Food related?
It's all about food.
Are you serving food?
Can you serve any?
Hopefully. Oh, we're just going to talk about it.
Oh, it's not all about food then. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that report. SPRC, did I get access to the thing so I can read the thing, or did I not?
I texted you the.
Oh, thank you. Sorry. Hold,
That's
please.
Okay. So we have one roster to amend. If that can be pulled up on the screen, since I don't think it was emailed around to the group, it's the Inn of Roslyn. There are just a couple of changes to that, which will be highlighted in yellow on the screen. So there you see it. So colleagues, you can see this amended roster for the Inn of Roslyn. Madam Chair, I'd like to ask for unanimous consent to amend the previously adopted roster.
Should we add our new commissioner to the Planning Commission?
Thank you very much. So can we add our new commissioner to this roster, please, right now, and then we will adopt that.
Unfortunately, I believe this document is a PDF, but we can absolutely have her added.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So, colleagues, this document plus the addition of Commissioner Guevara, and I ask for your unanimous consent to amend the previously adopted roster.
Seeing no objection? So adopted? That's the language? So adopted. Great. Yay. Are there any staff reports?
Is my mic on? Madam Chair, I do have 2 very fun updates that I would love to share with you. The last couple of months, we've been very busy working to hire an associate planner on our current planning team and a new principal planner to replace Michael Cullen. I'm happy to announce that we have hired some folks, and they may be familiar names. So Nicole Bowling, who previously worked for the county, is coming back to assume a role as an associate planner with us, and Chrissy Wallentish is also returning to assume a role on the site plan review team. So we're very happy about that, and they will both be starting during the month of May, and so look out for them. And that's all I have to report.
Oh, so those were the 2 fun updates.
Those are the 2 fun updates.
Got it. Okay. I was like, hire people. Okay, never mind. That's great. Next time with disco music. Okay, so, yep, Commissioner Hughes.
Since I didn't sell the OG report, the OG heard an update to the J.R. Lynch redevelopment proposals going on at the Barcroft project, so first steps. And then there's an upcoming meeting on the Career Center that Commissioner Weir will be chairing on May 10th.
All right, thank you. Any other reports? PFRC, you emailed it around. I emailed it around. You did? Yes, I did. But I did it essentially 3 minutes before this meeting. There is a...
That's why I haven't seen it.
Sorry. What do you mean you're not checking your email? Just kidding. Just kidding. We are meeting on the 17th of May for Career Center. I believe that will be the last meeting for Career Center before things happen and it goes more places, but I've been wrong before. So we'll see. Okay. Anything else? Can I gavel us out? All right. We are adjourned. See y'all in June. Oh, no, May 31st, right? May 31st. For the June.